Hello, 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 and welcome to yet another episode of the Conversation Capital. My name is Ursula Mariani. Some say Ursula Mariani. Some say Bonga Bueta, the voice of reason. Others say Obonga Bueta. Call us what you need to call us. We are having great conversations all the time. If you guys are new to the channel, what we do is usually have a Get Ready With Me episode first at the beginning of shoot day. And that's where we answer questions and we delve into a few interesting conversations. And that's what we're about to do.
To kick it off, we have Nozizwe Nuku, who says, I can't wait to need couples counseling. But also being in toxic relationships stems from our relationships with our fathers or the lack thereof. I know it's doing a real number on me in my adulthood, and as a woman who wants to be in a healthy relationship with a man, and as a parent, it affects me even more. Please explore this topic. So I think Nozis is speaking more on the impact of fathers, but I want to expand it to say generally the impact of our parents on our views on relationships or our behaviors in relationships.
Which episode was that on again?
This was with Do Abusive Partners Ever Change?
Okay.
So she was saying that toxicity stems from our fathers or the lack thereof.
I wish she had expanded to say whether her father was present or not present.
Yeah,
so
but
just
she's
understand
saying
the
it is something she's dealing with in her adulthood, and I think she mentioned father deliberately.
Yes,
It's probably her experience, but let's assume it
Yes,
is
yes.
her experience.
Yeah.
I wonder, for me, I'm thinking of my relationship with my father, and because it's a much more positive relationship, I think it's influenced it positively. My outlook on relationships.
Yes. Yeah, you've got a lovely.
But then
outlook
I
on
battle
relationship.
because I also look at the fact that my parents ended up divorcing, right? So I'm like,
But doesn't this go back to the numbers that shows that children that grow up in because your parents divorced at a much later age.
yes,
So for the most part, they were together in the.
they were together, but not in a healthy way.
You
And I wonder how much of that I've actually, this is actually me interrogating myself on
much
some of
has
my
it-
own behaviors.
Yes.
But I'm thinking, okay, my relationship with my father has definitely set the standard for men in my life, almost. But then now I'm interrogating how the relationship between my father and my mother
has
has
impacted.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love what you're saying.
Yes.
Something's even causing anxieties in the sense that, like, let's say if you grew up like with you, where your parents weren't getting along for a really long time,
Yes.
and maybe for you, you think the cause was that they're incompatible, then you start to be overly anxious about your compatibility with a certain person.
It's so true.
Yeah, even like
It's almost as if you read my mind.
Yeah.
100%, because I'm like, my parents, they got together, yes, and oh my god, if they're listening to they're probably thinking, why are you putting our business out there like
girl,
that?
this is our business. Yeah.
But I look at these people like they're great people, but they probably ended up together because they had a baby really young. You know, my mother was 16. So, back then you must be with the man you had a baby with and so forth. So I'm thinking about the whole compatibility thing. It's true, because I look at them and I'm like, they're actually so different. I don't know how they ended up together.
Yes. Yeah.
And that actually makes me ask myself, how much has it impacted my views on relationships?
Yeah, and just creating anxieties of entering into a relationship and now overly scrutinizing your compatibility with
And
another partner.
Just thinking on the top of my head, because I think I saw a divorce happen, I'm overly obsessed with not being reliant on a man. It's like you can leave anytime, so I have to prepare myself for the eventuality that you'll leave.
But what I can say that's a worldly, like, it's something that would have impacted you anyway, because I just see breakup and divorce happening on movies and I'm overly conscious. I say it on WhatsApp every other week. Girls, make sure you earn your own
But
money.
no, think about why you say that. You're seeing all the episodes, the
Yes.
girls saying stay-at-home girlfriend.
Yes, yes.
You're saying that because it's actually happening where women are being dependent on men.
But I'm also saying it because I'm also seeing the disadvantages of that.
Yes.
I'm seeing them firsthand with friends, with family members that cannot leave toxic situations for no other reason that they're actually financially dependent on this person. They're financially crippled.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is that you're saying I see breakups in movies and divorces and whatever, and I'm thinking about the fact that I always need to be dependent. I always need to be independent. What I'm saying to you is that, Ursula, you are this way because you are scared of, but there's a lot of people who are not thinking like us.
Okay.
So you're thinking,
oh, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
Men are going to leave, but there's a lot of people who don't think men are going to leave. They know it, but they're not preparing for the eventuality.
No, but there's this very popular, I don't know her name, but she's a stay-at-home girlfriend.
Yes.
But she says in one of her episodes, and I love this, she says, the only power you have as a woman is in leaving. She says, and once that locks, right? Meaning that she doesn't have a financial income or anything like that, and she's a stay-at-home girlfriend, but her power, she knows that it's in walking away, right? And I hope it always stays like that for her. But that like showed me that it's not necessarily that just because she's stay-at-home that she's crippled.
Yes.
She could be financially not bringing to the table, but she's not crippled. She knows that maybe she comes from a wealthy family. I don't know actually what her situation is that makes her so confident to say you can always walk away, you can always find another man. But I was just like, that's a different perspective to have, because for us it's like the moment you don't work, it means that you have to stay with this guy. You're financially crippled.
Yes.
But she doesn't see it that
She's
way.
saying, I can find another one.
I can find another one and another one after that, and the only power you have. But that line has never left me since I heard it sometime last year. Your only power isn't just being like, actually, there's 7 billion people in the world. And it's time for, and Given's about to say, E40 is so shy. E40, yeah, look at him. E40 is so shy. Come on, see him. Yes.
Okay, and then Raymond Malachi says...
Also, wait. Can we touch on the fact that Noziza says that she can't wait to have couples counseling?
Yes,
I
she
think
can't
she even
wait
said
to
law
relate.
after that.
Yes, she did
Yeah.
that embarrassed
Because
face.
she knows that toxic. Well, not really, because I thought of it again to say that couples counseling doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a bad place.
No.
It means that you are cognizant
Yes.
that this is a baby and an entity that we want to take care of and that we want it to be healthy. But I feel like she was saying it in the sense that
I can't wait to relate.
to be fighting with my bae that we need couples counseling. Toxic. Yeah.
And then Luzuko Mkati says, such a layered conversation. As he stated at the beginning, that society usually deals with the fruits rather than going to the root causes. This episode went straight to the roots. And then she says from the 12th minute to 15 minutes, we cannot run away from what patriarchy has done. The expectation of power, provision, strength from men regardless of age. The lines are so blurry when it comes to male abuse. Deals with things before they deal with you. I like how him and his partner saw a gap in the church and decided to offer their services. He mentioned that the church would rather pray issues away than deal with them. This conversation. So many nuggets to chew on. Firstly, let's begin with such a layered conversation that society usually deals with the fruits rather than the root causes.
No, Lina, yeah, but that whole episode, you guys just need to go watch it.
Yeah, if you haven't, it's the episode on can abuses be revoked?
Danny Vambili was the guest.
Yeah.
We need to have him back. Please organize that one. Because he's just, even afterwards, I think we sat like chatting for like another 3-4 hours after the episode had ended. In fact, we need to actually start recording those off air.
Yes.
Because we have some
amazing.
BTS.
Yeah.
No, our BTSs are fire actually. Yeah. But yeah, that whole episode and really just speaking to the core of like what happened, the root of what happens, and yeah, just looking at how men's abuse isn't dealt with. It's swept under the rug. You shouldn't feel violated when you're raped as a little boy because
and it's
why
almost
not?
What's the word?
He even
something.
He makes that comment of how R. Kelly's teacher openly says, I saw that there was something wrong with this boy. That thing hasn't left me, Like he talks about how she thinks it's something that she's just discovered. Like, what did you do, ma'am?
In that moment.
If it was a little girl, you would have done something. You would have called a social worker. You would have,
Luzuko says that the lines are so blurry when it comes to male abuse.
Yes.
But
are they blurry?
They're not blurry.
They're not blurry.
Definitely they're not blurry because it's clear. Yes. So abuse is clear. I think you and I have these conversations just in our personal capacity all the time where you have to pause and think, are you being a fair person in this situation with this man? In the week I was going through something, and then I'm thinking, I was wondering, I wanted to send that conversation to my friend, and I said, I hope I'm not gaslighting him, because it's as if we expect men to take things on better, or sometimes they must mute their feelings or whatever they're going through to be present for us,
or the burden of like feeling like this family unit, the direction of this relationship rests on the man. You get what I'm saying?
And I think a lot of it has to do, I'm just thinking about my own personal experience, and I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the running of the household or taking care of the baby rests on me as the mother or the woman. So now I'm like, you must take care of everything else. The wellness of this home rests on you because I'm taking care of this other stuff.
And even just that whole gender roles thing, that's definitely a discussion one needs to delve into, Sorry, I got distracted by that.
But that's behind the scenes. And then we're going to go to another episode, which had to do with how to cope with losing your job. Watching this as I'm at a crossroads with having to quit my current job or stay because of fear. I'm stuck and it hurts. I too work in the finance industry. You know what's crazy? Just recently, it's not even crazy, but on Twitter, I read a tweet from someone who says, I will never make the mistake of leaving a job without having a backup plan. Mental health, I hear it, all of that, but I'll never do that again. So this just reminds me of how at times you can leave a job because you are forced to leave a job to take care of yourself. Maybe it's a toxic environment, but there's also, especially in the context of South Africa generally, there's a lot of people who can't leave jobs because of circumstances. I also I agree with that person 100%. People will want to jump and say, I need to take care of my mental health, but haven't taken 2 or 3 months to apply for jobs. They wait for breaking point. And then, now they immediately need to quit to take care of their mental health. And I hear that, but it was building. What about all the months before that? All the 6, 7, 8, 10 months that you had building up to the breaking point where you're like, I'm actually unhappy. I need to look for something else. So that you move jobs instead of quitting jobs. Because I also have a friend who was telling me about their period of, he says he calls it retrenchment, but he says I wasn't retrenched. I just called that because I was unemployed for so long. I quit my job because I was so unhappy. And he couldn't find a job for 3-4 years. Right? So that led him into an even deeper, darker hole than what he was when he first started out. So we do have a responsibility to be observing, is this the type of environment? Because, I think sometimes we're bad at managing, clearly this is leading me down a rabbit hole. I'm not there yet, but I can see that in the next 3-4 years, if I continue on this path, I'm going to be unhappy. So start looking for another job in that time. And as I say that, I'm feeling convicted. And it takes us back to the basic of a lot of the conversations we've had here. If you're in tune or taking care of your mental health, whether it's seeking therapy or other forms of wellness, then you'll be aware, Hore, you don't start when at the breaking point. Let's make it an ongoing task to be taking care of ourselves. So that maybe you see a therapist or a counselor or your pastor, whoever is your go-to person or your go-to form of therapy. And you're like, you know what, I'm actually not in a healthy space, but before it gets too bad, let me. Then it's not too late. So we're not saying plan better, fail, but also if you're aware of your mental state and what your work environment contributes to that, then you can deal with it in a much more healthier way. We're not dismissing that you can quit your job without a plan, but there are better ways of doing it.
Yes, and just have foresight.
If you have to do it, but we can be in another job and leave the transition be better.
Yeah. You can preempt that. I don't think I can manage this for much longer. Start applying every day.
Yeah.
And
we have to speak about this. It's so weird how, to be employed is you're privileged, right? But we also have to talk about the exhaustion of looking while you are in a job. It's so like the time you have to dedicate to searching for that job,
Okay.
filling in the applications, finding a way to attend these interviews.
I hear you.
You know,
I hear
and
you.
it's something we don't talk about because you're privileged. You're looking for a job while you're in a job.
Yes,
but
yes,
it's
yes.
equally as exhausting.
It does take. A friend of mine took a month off to apply for universities. You know, across the world, UK, Malaysia, there, but took a month off to fully dedicate themselves into this activity. That applying for stuff can actually also be a daunting task in itself.
It's
it is
daunting.
And portal takes you from this portal, then you need to apply for this, and then it can be so tiring.
And then the added layer of doing all of that, only unemployed, no Wi-Fi, no.
Yeah.
And then on the video, to have to do with...
Can I just add on to that? Also, going to a job interview without a job puts you in a very bad place.
It does.
Because you're negotiating. Take anything.
The negotiating.
Yes, you don't know how to, because this is actually, I need this job actually.
Yeah.
Unlike going to an interview.
And they know you need.
Yes. Unlike going to an interview and you're sitting on a job, you took the day off to go to the interview. Your confidence is different. And it's always like, what are you guys offering? Let me kind of see. And it just
I'm only leaving for this much.
Yes. It gives you a different bargaining power. Oh, yeah.
That's so true. And then we are going to go to the episode to do with Living with Dyslexia by Justice Mukeli. Kutazo says, such an insightful episode. I have a sibling who suffers from a learning disorder and literally suffers through what Justice went through. Very sad to see. And then Luzuko goes on to say, the country I teach in right now has inclusive education. The learners with learning difficulties are identified and known, and there is so much support for them. For example, for maths and other core subjects, they go to have their own maths class which caters for their learning styles. They are trained teachers who specifically deal with them. I wish SA had the same resources. However, for English and other less serious subjects, they mix with other classmates. There is a boy with a severe case of autism. He has a nanny. The teacher accompanies him to all his classes. You know, the whole resource, I'm thinking about how all the schools that I know of, a lot of the schools that I know of that cater in a very intentional way for people with special needs are quite expensive. It's not...
No, absolutely.
It's not your everyday schools. I mean, we have public schools that cater, but the ones that I know, like boutique, very intentional and very deliberate about making sure you excel, are quite expensive.
And and it's not something that's integrated into our society, because there's another lady, and I really have been trying to get her onto the Conversation Capital. In fact, I hope she's watching this, ma'am. You know yourself. She's got an autism foundation. She's also doing research in autism, and she's got an autistic son. And so she told me a story. One time I interviewed her on another platform, and she told me a story that when she went to America for a few months for some research opportunity that she had, she said the community around was so accommodating of my autistic son because there was knowledge, right? So at some point the son sees the teller's numbers, and her son is totally consumed by numbers and wants to go. She says the teller immediately, feels comfortable to say, come, press the number, play, because she understands that, I need to give, because he's having a tantrum, he wants to. But here in SA, it's the child is no to, I'm trying to work, or, whatever. And then she also says at some point, while her child is throwing a tantrum, somebody else offered to do the groceries. She said, give me your list. Let me pick the items for you while you try to calm him down. The community is aware of what it is to deal with. There is awareness. Then she contrasts it. The family that she was helping out with an autistic child. I think the lights are too severe for the child. So he takes shoes and cracks the light bulbs. That's all he knows to relieve himself. So then he gets beat for it every single time. The uncle just gets furious and starts beating the child because they don't understand what the child is going through. All they know is that this child is naughty and they crack light bulbs. You see, so she was speaking towards just being in an environment that holistically knows and can identify we're dealing with an autistic child, not a normal child, and this is how I can support and help this parent right now. When I heard that, I was like, there's a bigger, it's not just the schools. We can deal with this at a community level.
Yeah. Just in relation to that, I was also watching another mother with a child with autism. Actually it wasn't autism, but it was another almost hyperactivity, but she was saying, instead of saying you need to calm down, I need to give you something to calm down, she's integrated her home to be like full of jungle gyms, to be full of ropes where the kid can bounce around, to be full of so many things that allow the child to be themselves. And she is such an active child. She's probably going to be a soccer or just a sports star, because instead of being dumped down or being told to come down, you're harnessed. And at the end of the day, we're all happy because we have a calm child who's been who's craving for activity is satisfied, and I'm a happy mother. So Reggie says, what a conversation. When we speak of making the world more inclusive, we lose sight of all the variations in abilities and the extent to which people need to overexert themselves to get by. There is so much to unpack in this conversation, but really, I am struck by how much our childhood experiences shape who and how we become.
Yeah, it goes back to you just don't know. You just don't know what's influencing you to think the way you do right now. I think of the first time I went to a primary school in Cape Town, the first few years of my primary school. And I remember we went on a class excursion. And I thought about it this week, and I don't know why I thought about it, but I wondered how that affects how I see things today. I fell off, I can't remember whether it was a slide or a swing or something, and I hit the ground and I started bleeding. I think I was in grade 2 actually, so I was around 8. And then as the kids were, running to help, another girl screamed, no, they've got HIV. And I was the only black girl in the class. I think the next year I had another black girl in the class. But for that grade year, I was the only black girl in the class.
So she's saying black people have HIV?
I'm assuming. I until now, I couldn't really interrogate. But I remember going home like, how, mom, you don't say original AIDS. Like, I literally was like, how, to me it made sense. I wasn't necessarily offended. I was just like, oh. And my mom was like, excuse what? And I just look at how the other day we're out of the country, me and my sister, and then I don't want to say the country Dubai because you're busy judging people that go to Dubai the other day. Okay, I went to Dubai on my own budget.
You're not doing nasty things, Nick.
You're such a judgmental person. You're making me nervous for saying I wasn't Dubai. But basically, now we're sitting at a restaurant with my sister. This is now, fast forward to now, this encounter. And so people are looking, right? And so then I look around, in any room I walk into, I quickly browse for the demographic. How many Indians, how many whites, how many blacks? That's naturally, and I don't think I'm racist, but I think that I've been groomed and conditioned in the climate of the country. I grew up in South Africa, one of the most racially tense countries in the world, that's how I view life. Unfortunately, I'm in a foreign country and I can't help it. So I quickly scan around, and as I see people like looking and, and then I'm like, we're actually one of maybe 3 other black tables here. I'm sure they're not used to black people. And my sister, being somebody who was born and raised in Malawi, in not such a racially tense country, she says, yo, you do this a lot. And it's quite exhausting, my baby girl. The world isn't that black and white. Like, people, maybe they're looking because you're pretty, or, like, we're eating a lot of food. Like, they could just be like, wow, with these gluttonous girls. Like, she was like, there's so many things to look at, And so then, like, I started reflecting on the different racial. I mentioned one story of mom, they've got HIV, but I could tell you, living in South Africa, kinalidi story of racial,
the first thing I
encounters.
Looked at when choosing varsities, I think I've told this story before, is SRC. I was like, Akishaba UP. I'm like, yo, I'm not going
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
We're just conditioned to know that, like, we need to look at the racial demographic. You step into a room, you're the only black person, you are Dibala. I need to put on my name is Ursula. Hong, 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 hong. But like, I it's one of those things. What things did you go through as a child, or the climate of the environment you grew up in, that are influencing the way you see the world, even when you're overseas, even when you're in a different environment, that does not enable you to see things differently?
I was just about to say, Hore, you're so clouded that it's not that. It's not that deep. But because of the way we've grown up, the environment we've grown in, and of course our experiences are substantiated, but in that context, it's likely not even that deep.
Yes.
I'm looking at you because, wow, your hair, like the other day when we were with Kizo, she's like, they're looking at your hair. Chinese people are looking at your hair because they're intrigued with the weaving. Is this your real hair? When they're thinking, why are you touching my hair?
Yes. It's because I'm a black girl. I'm a black girl. Oh, black girl. Yeah.
And then on the same episode, Living with Dyslexia, Nozizwe says, I think in our generation, the resistance is from parents. Everyone wants an Instagram child. 2, I would have done so much better if I could articulate my thoughts and not have to write them because my matric results are not who I am. The people who can help diagnose our children are still
my matric results are not who I am either. I read that and I was like, I feel that.
The people who can help diagnose our children are still out of reach. Psychologists and occupational therapists are still expensive at public hospitals. You need to jump through fairy hoops to get an appointment. 5, teachers unscreened enough for my liking. All of these reasons are why I homeschool my daughter. Wow, that's interesting.
As soon as I read that, I respected you.
Wow.
I don't have a child yet, but I will not be doing that. Like, it's just not a thing I ever see.
As someone that does have a child, I'm just like,
homeschooling, guys. Because would you? Yeah. You would totally do it. Give a thing. For me, it's like, where do I draw the line between having a baby and losing my life?
But you don't. For people that do it,
I feel like I'm giving so much. My future child is looking at this like, you've been a bad mom since you're
gonna play this one day.
Mama. Wait, you never actually want to.
For a lot of homeschooling, you can group homeschool. You can have a professional. Or there's just 3 kids at someone's house who's doing the homeschooling.
Okay, I didn't know that actually. I just imagine now, kitichere, ya maths, ya English. Hey, that thing just stresses me out. The thought of it alone stresses me out because I just feel like, now what happens to my career? What happens? But I think I'm also just generally very conscious not to lose myself when I have a child because I see my tendencies to become overly obsessive about a thing and so I don't want to do that.
But also if at that time that's what your life calls for, I'm thinking it's not such a bad thing. If that's what your life calls for at that particular time, to be absorbed by that baby, that's okay.
Then that's what it calls for.
Yes.
That's the season. I hear that too.
Yeah. And then what do you think about this? I think our generation, the resistance is from parents. Everyone wants an Instagram child.
Ooh, 100% because actually I'm not gonna mention as fact rumors that I've heard, but there's a celebrity that I know that I heard via the grapevine that they don't post the one daughter because she's chubby.
Oh yes, I know.
And
I've heard that too.
I've heard that one. And then there is also another celebrity that I know that also doesn't post much of the autistic child as well. Which, I mean, it's a fine line because it's my life as well. People don't post their children generally. And how much more when I know my child has a disability and is vulnerable to the public eye now. I don't want to I don't want my child to be. So it's a bit of am I hiding my child or am I protecting my child from something that they didn't opt to be a part of? Blue Ivy was now in Beyonce's show. She's of age to say, Mama, I want to be in your show. But can you imagine if they brought out the little rats that have no choice and not rats, I always call babies rats, short for rugrats. But if they brought out the little babies, that have no choice really, they're just doing, so now there's a part of consent that I would like my child to be involved in.
I can't remember, I don't know the particular name of the person, but she came out as she's a child star, but she came out to say, I did not consent to any of this. My parents put me in the public and it was not my choice. I wish it was done another way.
I mean, and then you get some child stars that are happy that they were child stars.
Yes, that's true.
So, hey, as a parent, it's actually very difficult.
Yeah, I because there's this, I even think of my daughter, there's this, what is this? I'm starting to articulate this, but there's this thing where every kid is on Instagram, has an account, and you could get free stuff. So you want to do that, like, hey, this is a baby, I can do something with you.
Yes, I mean, start paying the bills.
I think in the age of social media, almost. Yeah.
I'm saying you should be on a Huggies ad. You're 3 months paying for your own diapers. How hard can it be to laze around in a diaper and have pictures taken of you? Yeah, I'm joking.
No, we are joking. Then Pumla says, brain power. I like how this guy took something which he could have seen as a disadvantage and an absolute stumbling block to encourage himself to make things work for himself and set himself apart. When I think about things like this, like I'm glad of these stories, exceptional stories
Yes.
as you put it.
But it shouldn't
be that
the
way.
case.
It shouldn't be.
You know. But also with knowledge comes, I was listening to something else that they were talking about first modern medicine, or when modern medicine was starting out, and the different weird things that they would make people do. And I think it came out now with the Queen Charlotte story, the Bridgerton story, where basically the King George had a mental illness and they were torturing the mental illness out of him. But now when they look back, he probably had like bipolar or personality disorder or something. And the different weird medical methods that he was going through at the time. So there's always a transition happening when knowledge comes in.
True.
Do you get what I'm saying? So we are going through that transition with now learning disorders and the different things that we're facing now. So we do need to be lenient. Even though we wish it wasn't like that, we are an evolving generation. We're learning about disorders. Where science, research, this and that is teaching us different things. And then we look back at the way we used to do things. And we're like, damn. I mean, if you look at how there's stories of how land was being traded for mirrors with our forefathers. You can have 10 hectares of land for this piece of mirror. It sounds ridiculous now.
Yes.
But with knowledge comes that kind of information. Oh, this was lovely. But we do need to sign out. I think that's more than enough. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Conversation Capital. Any of the many conversations we touched on, feel free to comment in the comment box. Make sure to leave us some love. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to that 10,000 mark. Did you see?
I did.
It's 7.5.
And I'll come out.
Yeah, you come out. You didn't tell me. For now, though, goodbye and God bless.